So just like there's consumer surplus, there will also be producer surplus. So whereas consumer surplus was the difference between willingness to pay and the price paid, okay, producer surplus is the difference between your willingness to sell, and you'll be willing to sell if the price is above your cost. So it's the difference between your marginal cost and the price. So if we were to draw that, okay, what goes on the x-axis, quantity, y-axis, price, demand slopes downward, supply slopes upward, okay. So the demand curve tracks your willingness to pay, okay. Equilibrium price is right here. Just going to use P bar because drawing a star on this in PowerPoint is pretty hard. So P bar is your equilibrium price. So just like this is consumer surplus, this is your producer surplus. Okay. And it'll be the difference between the producer's marginal cost and the price, okay, or the willingness to supply and price. And basically what that's saying is for each additional unit sold, they're getting some sort of profit on it. Profit is revenue minus cost, where price times quantity is revenue. So for one unit sold, price minus cost will be your profit for that unit. And that's basically your producer surplus in a nutshell. Okay, it's really just the mirror image of consumer surplus, and it's a method of measuring and quantifying how well producers are doing in a particular market, or as the result of a policy change or something like that. Okay, so we can go right through them real quick. It's not very different. So once you have your supply curve and your equilibrium price, you can calculate producer surplus pretty easily. It's just the same way that demand is. It's just the area above the supply curve now. Okay. So producer surplus is the difference between willingness to sell and price. Okay. When a seller receives a price greater than his or her cost, he or she is willing to sell, or they are willing to sell, I should say. So individual producer surplus is equal to the price received minus the seller's cost for that particular good. And producer surplus is the area between the supply curve and price. And just like how how consumer surplus decreased when price increased, right? As the price increased, let's say from this point here, so let's say we had a supply shift in, okay, from S to S1, and a corresponding price increase from P bar to P, we'll call it double bar, okay. As price moved from P bar to P double bar, right, as price increased because of the result of a supply shift, consumer surplus decreased, okay. So if we had a price increase with supply as a result of a demand shift, so supply should shift upwards, okay. So if the price increased, let's just be a D. So the price went from P bar to P double bar. These lines should be connected to the axis. I'm sorry, it's very, 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 very difficult for me to draw on here. But as price increased from P bar to P double bar, the area above the supply curve between price and supply has now increased. Okay, and I understand this graph is ugly. You'll see it in the next slide. Don't worry your pretty little head off. All right. And then the corollary is producer surplus drops when price drops. Okay. So this is a price change as a result of a demand shift. So you can draw like a little demand curve here and a little demand curve here if you wanted to. But basically, as the price increases, consumer surplus used to be A. Now it's A plus B plus C. Okay. B is the additional consumer surplus that existing producers got on goods sold. So if I was selling the first hot dog, now I'm selling it at a higher price, so I'm making more profit off of it. Okay, and then C would be the additional consumer producer surplus because there are new goods being sold that weren't before. Okay, and this line kind of got jumbled up here, but it should be closer to here. So this whole area should be B. So excuse me on that. And this should be C. Okay, just to clarify. So the new producer surplus is A plus B plus C. Okay, change in producer surplus is B plus C, where B is existing goods now being sold at a higher price, and C is new goods being sold at all. Okay, the addition of new goods on which you can gain producer surplus. Right. And then the final concept is total surplus, and that's very easy. It's just your consumer surplus plus your producer surplus. Okay. In a market, both consumers and producers can benefit from buying in the market. Remember, all transactions are voluntary, and when you specialize, when you divide tasks up by your comparative advantage, there are gains from trade. So as long as the price is different than your opportunity cost, you're going to see a gain from trade. Okay. So this is just an additional way of framing your gains from trade. All right. I'm going to stop there. That pretty much concludes consumer and producer surplus. I would suggest, so in the last lecture, lecture 4, part 1, I had on slides 24 to 26 a set of questions about the chocolate market, and at the bottom there was a little italicized part that said calculate the consumer surplus. I'd suggest you do that. I'll put a module up for that. And if you can calculate it correctly, let me know if you or if you can't calculate it correctly, I should say, let me know if you have any questions. All right. Now we'll move on to Pareto equilibrium.